walk into that prison system, your life could be on the line at any given moment. It don't matter if you're a cop, don't matter if you're a prisoner. There's dudes in there that got nothing to live for. There's dudes in there that ain't never getting out. So what could you possibly do to them? You think, oh, you could put them in the hole, or you could give them the death penalty. Some dudes just don't care. Today we're going to be discussing a case where dude kills his aunt when he's 15 years old, gets a life sentence. He's in the Department of Corrections, and just the other day, he decides on one of the most dangerous prison systems in the country that he's going to take the cop's life. The cop was only on the job 6 months, and now he's forever gone.
Just in, a correctional officer killed after being assaulted by an inmate today. This happened at the Smith Estate Prison. Authorities say correctional officer Robert Clark was escorting 2 inmates when one assaulted him from behind with a homemade weapon. The other inmate stepped in to assist Officer Clark, and that is when he was also hit. The 2 were taken to the hospital. Officer Clark later died. Right now, there are no other details that have been released by law enforcement.
On the evening of April 29, 2007, 15-year-old Leighton Lester was at his right-hand man's house, Sherrod Rich. Leighton would tell Sherrod that they should rob his great-aunt, Lorraine Bozeman, that he knew she had just got a bunch of money and was planning on buying a house. He would tell his friend that he knew for sure that his auntie had about 5 stacks at the crib, and if it meant taking the old lady's life, then that was what he was going to do. He knew she kept her money in her pocket as she previously had been robbed when her home was burglarized. Sherrod and Leighton would put their plan together. They plotted believing that they had the perfect plan in place, but never considering the consequences of their actions if they had to pull the trigger. Sherrod's brother was present, listening in as the 2 plotted, and if you've ever seen First 48, you know what that means. When it comes to his blood brother, it would not matter. Sherrod's brother was not going to prison for the sins of his brother. He would later outline the case for the police. Between 10 and 10:30 p.m., Sherrod's great-aunt Lorraine would hear someone tinkering with her door. As she stood up from her bed, the tinkering would cease. She would walk to her front door, and as she went to look out the window, her nephew would kick the door open. She would scream in fear. In the still of the night, she seen the outline of the great-nephew who would shoot her twice. As Lorraine Bozeman lay on the ground and blood pooled around her, 15-year-old Leighton would look down at her lifeless body in a panic. But he came to take her money. So he bent down and rifled through her pockets, stripping her of all she had. Lorraine's sister, Vernell Clay, who lived several houses away, would hear the gunshots and see 2 people running through her backyard. Vernell's son would see the same 2 people running with 2 shotguns and would later testify at the trial that was sure to come. Vernell knew in her spirit that something had just happened to her sister. Vernell and her son ran to Lorraine's house and found her laying on the floor without a pulse. A paramedic arrived and confirmed that Lorraine could not be revived, and the crime scene would be processed. Vernell would kneel on the ground crying, wondering who could be so cruel as to shoot her sister dead with a shotgun. Never in her wildest dreams would she imagine it would be someone so close. Photographs taken at that time and trial testimony from the paramedic and a law enforcement officer revealed that Lorraine's left pants pocket was pulled inside out before they arrived, and that it was likely she had the money there. When Sherrod and Leighton returned to Sherrod's house, Sherrod's brother observed that Leighton had changed into black clothes, was breathing hard, was nervous, and later had cash to spend for food. Sherrod and Leighton told Sean Ross, a friend of theirs who lived in their area, that they had robbed and shot Lorraine, and that she had screamed when they first kicked the door open. Leighton, scared and now contemplating on what he had just done, would call his mother that night and want to go home. He would ask her to come pick him up. Once his mom showed up, he would pass $1,000 to his friend Rodney King, not the guy from L.A., and ask him to hold it for him. Leighton's mother had heard the news that Lorraine had been killed, but she too would never think that her son would be the devil that would take the life of their own family member. But as young men do, Leighton was scared and continuously called his friends on the phone. His mother became suspicious after overhearing some of his conversations. Leighton's mother was becoming afraid of her own son and called the cops, believing that he might have been the perpetrator. She would convince her son that they needed to go to the police station that morning, and that they did. At 7 a.m. that morning, First 48 was in full force once again. Leighton was sitting in that uncomfortable chair while his mother sat and listened to him tell different stories to the police, implicating himself in the killing. He would change up and blame it on others. At 15 years old, he didn't have the street smarts that he thought he did. His only mission was to get out of the damage he had caused, and in his young mind, he believed blaming others would be his key to freedom. Leighton would tell the cops that King and another person had planned to rob a drug dealer, left Rich's house to commit the robbery, and returned and gave Lester cash to keep him quiet. During the interview, Layton admitted that he knew his auntie generally kept money in her pocket because of that previous burglary. Almost an hour and a half into the interview, an officer asked if Layton Lester's mother would leave the room. And after telling her son she wanted to hear no more as she was troubled by his confessions, she agreed to leave, leaving the 15-year-old boy, or is he a man, all alone. Officers continued interviewing Layton, who changed his story several times. At one point, officers would bring King into the interview room because King had given a statement that contradicted Layton's. During that time, there was no physical contact between Layton and King, and officers would position themselves so that they could prevent any type of threat to Layton. Layton then admitted that King was not involved in Lorraine's robbery and murder. When King left, Layton said that Gerald Rogers and another person approached him committing a robbery. Left Rich's house, returned and gave Lester $1,600 not to tell the police anything about what happened. Officers would then interview Rogers, who gave a statement that once again would contradict the statement given by Layton. And when Rogers was brought into the interview with Layton sitting there, Layton did not want to speak in front of Rogers. He looked scared and intimidated. When Rogers was taken out of the room, Layton admitted that he and someone other than Rogers had planned Bozeman's robbery. At Layton's request, he then spoke alone with one of the agents who had previously interviewed him. Layton told the agent that the person he had planned the robbery with was named Grady, but his real name was none other than Sherrod Rich. He had just become the snitch that you see on First 48. Layton admitted that he and Rich had gone to Lorraine's house on the night of the robbery, and that Layton kicked in Bozeman's door, but claimed that Rich shot Bozeman twice. Layton also said that Rich took the money from his aunt's pocket, indicated that the money had been taken specifically from her left pocket. Layton, after 6 hours of interrogation, had now given the cops the real story and sealed Sherrod's fate along with his own. In the end, Layton, even at the age of 15, was sentenced to life in the Georgia Department of Corrections. Georgia is a prison system filled with violence every step of the way. On March 2023, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution analysis shows that the most recent 3-year period saw 36 suicides and 62 more homicides at the prison facilities in that state. Social media is rife with videos depicting the violence on the other side of the razor wire. Some of those murders are that of inmate Kevin Deshawn Lamar, who was killed at Macon State Prison on August 10th. The investigation into his death revealed it to be a result of a homicide at the hands of his roommate, Garland Pittman. Pittman is now facing charges of murder, aggravated assault, and possession of a homemade weapon during the commission of the crime. He, too, has likely sealed his fate. There's a long list of prisoners that have left their blood on the razor wire in the Department of Corrections inside of the great state of Georgia. Diddy Gozer, 39, was strangled. Thomas Henry Giles, 31. He also would die from violence. Terry Lee Bennett, blunt impact to the head. Ali Lamont Tanner, stabbed. Joshua Williams, multiple sharp force injuries. Jose Martin Abrera Garcia, multiple stab wounds to his head. Edward McLeod, sharp force injury to the neck. Jamari McClinton, stabbed. Bedarius Clark, homicide, stabbed. Keon Parks, stabbed. Rufus Lee, homicide. Raul Balian Garcia, asphyxiation and suffocation. He was strangled to death by another prisoner. Joctavius Artez Newsom, he was stabbed. Demetrius Stubbins, stabbed. Christopher Dwayne Mathis, blunt force trauma to his head. Fabian Garcia Mata, multiple stab wounds. Troy Harvey, stab wound to the chest. All prisoners killed. The list continues, and even the cops are not immune to getting hit with a prison shank. Layton, after years of languishing in prison, would strike again. This time it would not be his aunt, but instead a prison guard. With a prison knife tucked into his waistband, Layton would decide it was time to kill again. 42-year-old Robert Clark, on the job for only 6 months, he would become the next victim, leaving his blood on the razor wire. Layton and another prisoner, Marco Willingham, were being escorted by the prison guard from the mess hall when Lester would pull the knife from inside his pants and attack him from behind. He would stab at the cop numerous times. Marco Willingham would yell, "What the fuck you doing?" as he tried to help fight Layton off. Even with Marco's help, the cop would fall to the ground, where he would look at the gloomy concrete walls, wishing he never took this job just 6 months earlier. And then he would close his eyes for forever. Both would end up in the hospital. Marco would live. The cop would be pronounced dead. Layton Lester would now be charged with the assault of both Marco and the cop, as well as the cop's death. Will Georgia now put Leighton Lester, the devil, to death?
Now, you know you've seen First 48, right? This kid's 15 years old. 15 years old, never contemplating what the consequences of his actions are. Never thinking, damn, I'm about to go over here and rob my aunt, and right off the rip, I'm putting her lights out so she can't tell on me for the robbery. Never contemplates the fact that, the police are going to come in there. They're going to do this big investigation. They got all kinds of tools and ways to figure things out. And now you're going to end up with a life sentence. Never thinks about that. For what? $5,000? He gets half. His man gets half. They divvy up a couple dollars between the fellas. And the next thing you know, old boy's down there on the First 48. Not literally on the show, but he's doing what I call the First 48. He's trying to convince himself that he can get out of this shit as long as he blames his man Rodney King. They bring Rodney in there. Rodney's like, man, it's a lying motherfucker right here, man. You did this shit, man. I ain't going to jail for you. Then they bring his other man in there. He's intimidated by him. He won't talk in front of him. He's like, all right, man, I'm going to tell you guys the truth this time. Fifth or sixth time in, he's going to tell them the truth. And eventually he's like, yo, look, man, it was me and my man, bro. I'm 15, he's 18. Yo, really? He's the one that really wanted to do it. I mentioned my aunt, and he was like, yo, let's make this happen. Never expecting that he's going to spend the rest of his life in prison at 15 years old. There's a 15-year-old kid out there watching this right now, right, with your pops. Your pops told you to check this one out. And you're out there in the street, but you never thought that, you could end up with a life sentence, right? Think again. And then when you walk into that Georgia Department of Corrections, I'm sure you can see the videos. They're all over. I got a bunch of them. They're all over social media. These dudes are gutting people, man. These dudes got swords in there. These dudes got them big boys in there. They ain't playing no games. They're taking people's lives, taking your last breath. And it's viciously violent. I've seen some stuff in Georgia where I'm like, wow. And I've told people plenty of times, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, you don't want to be there. Mississippi, you don't want to be there. Dangerous. Could be the last place you ever take your breath. Man, life has a lot of meaning to it. You can go ahead and throw it away. You can go ahead and give it away. And this cat's probably lonely, depressed, been in there since he was, 15. He's like, damn, I've been in here since 2007, man. Like, damn, man, I've been in here like 14, 15 years. Maybe he was having a bad day. And he decides, this dude just started working. I don't like him. I don't like the way he talks to people. I'm about to put his lights out. And he puts his lights out. What's going to happen now? He's going to have you think his life was miserable then? It's really going to be miserable now. All eyes are on this dude. It's all over. The whole world's watching this shit. It's all over the news, right? They're going to strap him to the chair, say goodnight. What about his mother? His poor mother, right? His mother's probably like, damn, my son again? Like, are you serious? Think about it, man. Think about the things that you do before you do them. Think about the consequences. Sit back and be like, man, are these people really smarter than me? You're 15, 16, 17 years old. They're probably smarter than you. They've been to school. They've been doing this shit for 20 years. Experience. How many people you see on First 48, they catch them, right? Everybody thinks they're not going to get caught. Everybody thinks, yo, I'm about to make this happen. I'm doing this robbery. I'm taking this bread and, oh, shit. Damn, I remember that First 48. It ain't worth losing your life over. This is a serious case, man. But let it be a learning experience today. You don't want to end up in prison with life at 15. Fuck, you don't want to end up in prison with life at 50. You definitely don't want to end up in Georgia, do you? When they're running around with swords. Yeah, you're a tough guy. Everybody's a tough guy. So they put that knife in you. Blood on the Razor Wire TV. With respect. Till tomorrow, we're out.